Okay, now we're going to learn Torah. Gentlemen, we're starting.
Is this thing recording? I'm gonna.
Have you pushed a button?
I pressed the button, but isn't like.
You should have an indicative somewhere. So try it again.
Oh no, it is.
Okay. So we get to Pesach, and we get to the Hagadah. Everybody knows the Hagadah. And of all the books that have been written, you probably have more commentary on the Hagadah than everybody has written commentary on the Hagadah. So you just want to point out, obviously we cannot exhaust the subject completely. Were you here yesterday for the Hagadah shir? Yeah. Because no one else was. So I'm going to repeat.
Robbie, there's a Hagadah shir
from yesterday.
Okay,
I'm going to repeat it today to get them in. None of the guys were here.
You're going to be like Aaron.
But,
you get to hear extra.
So tomorrow we're going to continue on. Yeah, I just want to give them a review from the beginning. Okay. So the Hagadah begins before anything else. The laws of Pesach begin with what's called Kimcha de Pischa. Kimcha de Pischa means the idea of providing the poor people with food for Pesach. There's the idea of every community they have the Kimcha de Pischa drive. I think we could turn off the air conditioning a little. Yeah, it's freezing in there. Yeah.
Doesn't bother me one way or the other.
Okay, so. Let's turn it down a little. Now there are fewer people in the room. So Kimcha de Pischa is that the idea that we provide poor people. You've heard of Kimcha de Pischa, ma'ot chitim. You ever heard the idea? And the laws of Pesach begin with the concept of providing for the poor people. It's a very strange thing, we do find on Purim that you have to you give matanos le'evyonim, you give the gifts to the poor. But we don't have anything like this by Sukkot. By Sukkot, we don't have any sort of, provide the poor people who love Him and it's right. It's always good to provide for the poor. But there's a special law by Pesach that we want the poor people to be able to enjoy Pesach, and we have a drive in every community. So the question becomes why? Why by Pesach of all? By Pesach there's a law, Kimcha de Pischa, make sure that the poor have. Why? Why by Pesach? So the commentaries say like this. It's very interesting. Commentaries say, what is Pesach really about? Pesach is the holiday of faith. You have faith in God, right? We got out of Egypt. If God wouldn't take us out, we'd still be in Egypt. And it's all about having faith. Faith is a very, very tricky thing because sometimes I have faith, and then a poor man knocks on my door and says, hey, can I have some money? You say, listen, brother, have faith. The Torah wants to teach you, listen, the faith is for you, not for him. Faith is for you. At your level, you have faith on a faith level. For him, faith should be in a very practical level. Don't try to, in other words, there's a danger here. Since we're also up with emunah, right, emunah stops with me. When it comes to you, I have to do whatever I can physically in a material way. Probably the classic example of emunah, if somebody bends down to pick up their pen, they smack their head on the table. Oh, smacked his head. Guys, it's gamzu l'tova. You've ever heard the expression gamzu l'tova? This too is for the best. Our attitude in life is supposed to be whatever difficulty, whatever challenge or ordeal a person goes through, it's supposed to be this too is for the best. But if the guy next to you sits down, bangs his head on the table, you don't say to the guy, gamzu l'tova. Don't comfort him with your emunah, gamzu l'tova, because then he'll take a chair and hit you and say, gamzu l'tova, right? Then you can have a gamzu l'tova fight. And don't, what do you call it? Be faith, if faith is for you. The question people often ask is, how much what hishtadlus is? Hishtadlus is how much effort you should make into your parnasa. How do you measure that? It's a tricky question. How much effort should I make in my parnasa? And how much is already going beyond, and how much isn't enough? So the Rambam writes that a person should work. Rambam says a person should work 3 hours a day. And 9 hours a day you should study Torah. The alternative is to learn in Kollel. Right? 3 hours you work, 9 hours you study Torah. That's if you're an ordinary Jew. By us nowadays, a guy who's a superstar learns 9 hours a week. But the Rambam says you work 3 hours a day. Let me ask you a question. Could you find me a job where I work 3 hours a day? I'll take it. Make up parnasa nowadays on 3 hours a day and I'll take it. The answer is that hishtadlus, effort, is relative to the society that you live in. In our society, let's say you become an accountant. accountant has to work 9 hours a day, 8 hours a day. If you work less than that, you're not putting in a proper effort. If you work more than that, if you work more than your 9 hours a day, then you're doing too much. That means you're saying, well, God can't provide me, I'm going to have to do it on my own. You have to find out in your society what the norm is. That becomes your responsibility. Since the time of Adam's sin, God has cursed us that we have to work. Somebody asked me this morning, my hostess where I'm staying, she asked me if I have any allergies. I said, yes, I'm allergic to work. That's my only allergy. I met a Russian guy in Israel who was driving a cab. Beautiful new Mercedes. In Israel, the cabs are Mercedes. A lot of cabs are. This guy had a beautiful Mercedes. They pulled up. I had to go somewhere. He pulled up to my house. I get in. I said, this is a really nice cab. He says, yeah, there's only one problem. I said, really? He said, yeah, I got to work in it. Now, other than that, I had a student once. I called him up a long distance. I said, how you doing? Good. How's work? He goes, well, it's okay. I mean, that's why they call it work. Yeah. So a person understands. So the first thing the Torah says is, the Torah says, you know what? Make sure that you have emunah for yourself. When it comes to the poor people, make sure that you give them $20 or open up your wallet so that they have food for Pesach. That's idea number one. Idea number two is we sit down on Pesach and we have what's called the Seder, Pesach Seder. People have been making Pesach Seder through generations. What does the word Seder mean, gentlemen?
Order.
Order. It means an order. Why is the Pesach Seder called a Pesach Seder? Right? That's what it's called. It's called the Seder. Why is it called the Seder? Why do we
follow the order, right?
You follow the order. Obviously, you follow the order of the Seder, right? We follow the order of the Seder. But why is it? That's true. It is made in a certain order. But why do we call it the Seder? Why is the Pesach Seder called the Seder? You know, why not call it something else? Why is it in a prescribed order? Were you at the shir yesterday, by the way? At the Hagadah shir? Were you at the Hagadah shir yesterday? Were you at the Hagadah shir yesterday? Okay. Good. No, because I started again from the beginning. We're just reviewing what we did yesterday. This way we could. There are several answers to this. Why it's called a seder. Answer number one is that this is celebrating all of the miracles that were done in Egypt. And the Torah wants to remind us, don't think that these miracles that happened in Egypt were haphazard, random and haphazard. In other words, let's back up for a second. What was the whole idea of the 10 plagues? What was the whole idea of the miracles in Egypt? The idea is to show us that God has immediate involvement in this world. But not only has immediate involvement in this world, we should understand that part of his immediate involvement in the world is everything was done in a proper order. So the commentaries say, for example, the Medrash says, God brought the 10 plagues like a military campaign. God brought the 10 plagues like a military campaign. Nowadays, a military campaign is a guy sitting in the back room with a laptop, just took out Damascus, War is very impersonal nowadays. You just kind of push buttons, blow up cities. There's no job satisfaction. In the old days, war was very, very personal. So let's say you were besieging a city. What's the first thing you do? You hit the water supply. Blood. The next thing you do is you sound the trumpets. Frogs. Frogs were croaking very loudly. The commentaries say the croaking of the frogs was even worse than the frogs jumping around. They're croaking so loudly with a deafening croaking sound. Wow. The next thing you do, you start shooting in arrows over the wall. Kinim, lice, that start the body. The next thing you do is the fierce warriors attack. Orov, the mixed multitude of animals. The whole procedure was a procedure of a military campaign, and it culminates with the catapults. You send in those big what do you call it? The hailstones. Yeah. And then you imprison the people. First of all, the masses then flood in, which is the arba, the locust. Then you imprison the people, which is darkness. They couldn't move, symbolic of a prison. Then you kill the high officials, which is makas bechoros. So the whole thing is very precise. It's done in an order, and therefore it's called a seder, to remind us that all of those miracles in Egypt, which each one is more astonishing than the next, and there's a method to this madness. There are other explanations for what the makos were. That's the idea, that it's being brought as a military campaign, number one. Number two, there's a famous story about a father sends his son off to yeshiva. Son went, I think it was Cleveland Tells. He sent him out of town, and the boy went off to yeshiva. So at a certain point, parents decided, got to check up how's the kid doing in yeshiva. How's he learning? Yeah, you send him off. How's he learning in yeshiva? So the father gets in a plane, flies off to Cleveland, goes to the yeshiva, goes straight up to the dormitory, and goes into his son's dorm room. Walks into the dorm and says the bed is well made, shoes are in order under the bed, all the clothing is hanging properly, the room is clean. Turns around, goes right back to the airport, flies out, never talked to the rabbis, everything. Says to his wife he's learning well in yeshiva. How does the father know? Because there's seder, there's order in the kid's life. When there's order in your life, if they're orderly here, then you're orderly over here. If your room looks like it's been hit by a tornado, then your life is being lived like a tornado. There are certain people, I just met a guy who missed his flight. The guy at Orsamat missed his flight. I mean, there's certain people who are always running late. There's certain people who always feel if he would have just he's 5 minutes late to everything. 5 minutes late to Minyan, 5 minutes late to work, 5 minutes late to 5 minutes. He's always 5 minutes late. You almost get the feeling if he would have gotten up 5 minutes earlier, his whole day would have been changed. Right? He's just got to get up 5 minutes. He's always 5 minutes late. 5 minutes late to the doctor, 5 minutes late to the airport, 5 minutes late. He's always 5 minutes late. Seder means what stops us from living our life in an organized fashion, in a well thought out fashion. What's stopping us? Called the evil inclination, called the Yetzer Hara. On Pesach, we're free of the Yetzer Hara. Seder means that we have become free, not only physically free. Free from Egypt means we're free from what Egypt represents. And therefore, we become free on Pesach. We are free people to live our life with a certain Seder. That's what the Seder represents. I think I mentioned to you that the whole idea of Pesach, Matzah, Chametz, the whole idea is 7 days. In a Chutz La'aretz, you do 8 days because the law in the Torah is that Pesach is supposed to be a 7-day holiday. 7 days represents the average. 7 days represents the 7 decades of the average lifespan. 7 days is the 7 decades of the average lifespan, and therefore, what we're doing is symbolically we're trying to remove the chametz, which is the symbol of the evil inclination, the Yetzer Hara. We are symbolically showing that our goal in life is during the course of that lifetime to remove that Yetzer Hara for the 70 years. Okay. Now, here we come to a very, very interesting concept. Very interesting concept. And we've all been at the Seder and we've all probably wondered about this. You know, you get to the Pesach Seder, Kadesh, Urchatz, and by the way, Jews have been doing this. Jews who are even distant from Torah are connected to the Pesach Seder. It's remarkable how many people are connected to the Pesach. Kadesh, Urchatz, Karpas. Okay. Be well. So, one of the interesting things is, you get the Kadesh, Urchatz, and then you get the Karpas. And Karpas is a little vegetable. You take a bite of, celery or carrot or something, and you eat less than a kazayas. Make a bori priyadama, and then you get into Magid. You start saying over the story. Now, what often happens is you get to the Pesach Seder and you're absolutely starving. You haven't eaten all day. And you get to the Pesach Seder, and if you're a guest at somebody's house, you may have a long-winded host who goes on and on and on, and you're just dying over there of starvation. And when you eat this karpas, the karpas only make things worse, because you take this bite and you start chewing that, I'd like to knock off that whole plate of celery over there. You can only eat less than a kazais. And you're just, and you're waiting, and then next thing you know, okay, Magid, you got to tell the whole story that goes on and on and on, and drones. And what is karpas really supposed to be? What is karpas? The whole idea of dipping it in. Why are we eating karpas? What does karpas symbolize?
Bitterness?
No, that's the moror. That's the moror.
Well,
the karpas.
The tears?
But what does the karpas itself? What does it serve? What's the function of the karpas in a meal? Karpas is an appetizer. That's our appetizer. Now, most appetizers, when you eat an appetizer, first of all, you get to eat more than one bite.
Yeah, what kind of appetizer?
And second of all, the appetizer is then followed by the meal.
Yeah.
Here you take your appetizer, then you're tortured. Right?
It's a tease.
It's a tease. It's exactly correct. The karpas teases you. What's going on here? Why are we doing that? Question number one. Question number two. The Jewish people, it says in Egypt that the Jewish people were in the 49th level of impurity. Did you ever hear that idea? They reached the 49th level of impurity. They had to be taken out of Egypt, otherwise they would have gotten to the 50th level. They would have never gotten out of Egypt. Okay, whatever that means. On the other hand, it says that the Jewish people did not change their names, their clothing,
Wow.
or their language.
Amazing.
210 years in Egypt, they didn't change their names, their clothing. Now that is impressive. If you stop and think about it, in the United States, when people came over to the United States, how long did it take them to change their names? They changed their names on the boat. They changed their names on Ellis Island. They changed their names. They changed their language for sure. They changed everything changed. 210 years, and they held on to that Jewish identity. That's pretty impressive. So how could it be that they're criticized for having gotten to the how could they have gotten to the 49th level if they were still so Jewish? How could they possibly be? That's question number 2. So again, question number 1 is what are we doing with the karpas? And question number 2 is what's with this criticism of the Jewish 49th level, considering they're actually doing pretty well? What's going on here? So the two are really linked together. There's an interesting phenomenon. In Israel, they've discovered Bali Chuvas. Israelis leave Israel and become Bali Chuvas in very high numbers. They go to West Germany, they go to Los Angeles, they go to Tibet, they go to Canada. That's where they become Bali Chuvas. In Israel, where it's all there on a silver platter for you, a lot of them don't move. They leave Israel and then they become Bali Chuvas. Why is it? It's interesting. You know, people, experts in the field, you know what they say? When you're in Israel, and you're an Israeli born in Israel, you have a Jewish identity. You speak Hebrew, you eat garinim, you know, you go to shul once in a while. You're surrounded by Jews, you have a Jewish identity. A Jewish identity is a double-edged sword. In one way, Jewish identity is excellent. In another way, Jewish identity is very, very dangerous because it doesn't force you to move. I'm Jewish. Okay, you're religious. I'm not religious. Why should I move? I'm Jewish. I speak Hebrew. I even say Yalla, bye. Right? So what could be more Jewish than that? And therefore, they leave Israel, go off to a place like West Germany. All of a sudden, you're surrounded by Goyim. Oh, well, who am I? I know who they are. Who am I? You start searching. And when you search, you end up going. Once you start searching, so then you go way past what you were. You go all the way and you become a Baal Tshuva. So the Jewish people in Egypt, on the one hand, yes, they held on to their faith, they held on to their Judaism. The problem is that there's really no motivation to move. We are second-rate citizens. The society has made us slaves. There are rumors about a redemption one day. Yeah, redemption, like we believe in Mashiach. That's going to be. I want to ask you, were any of you disappointed? You saw the morning's headlines today? Were you disappointed? Didn't say anything about Mashiach arriving. Were you disappointed? Do you believe there's going to be Mashiach? You believe it? Yeah. So how come you weren't disappointed this morning? Why weren't you disappointed when you read the headlines? It didn't say, if Mashiach would come, it would be on the headlines, right? Mashiach arrives. Right? Why weren't you disappointed? The answer is, well, I believe. But, you know, I believe. I mean, there's belief and there's belief. I definitely believe, but, you know, it would be good to really, you know, there's belief. When you're waiting for a bus or a train, you know, kind of looking down the block. Is he on the way? Is he coming? Is he? That's how we're supposed to be waiting for Mashiach. The Jewish people, yeah, there's this tradition. Yeah, there's going to be a redeemer. In the meantime, you're getting whipped by Egyptians, and you're building bricks in hot weather. And you're getting whipped by Egyptians, and then the guy next to you says, "Don't worry, there's going to be a redeemer one day." Well, it's easy for you to like, bam, smack. You know, and you're a redeemer. Yeah, we believe. Okay, so you got a Jewish identity. You're in you're in a rut. You're a second-class citizen. You don't really have, okay, I'm Jewish. What, where am I going with all this? And all of a sudden, Moshe Rabbeinu shows up. Moshe Rabbeinu shows up, the Jewish people, whoa, he's here. Headlines, Moshe arrives. And then the Medrash says he leaves for 6 months. He left for 6 months. Let me ask you a question. Imagine a person has chronic knee pain. His knees are throbbing, his knees are aching. He goes to the doctor. Doctor says to him, listen, they've got a pill on the market now. There's a pill available. You take this pill, you'll be free of pain for 24 hours and no side effects. Here, take this pill and try it. The guy takes the pill, he goes up, takes the pill. 24 hours, first time in 15 years, he has no pain in his knees, no side effects, his stomach doesn't hurt, nothing. Comes back to the doctor, the next day says, it was great, doc, I'll take a prescription. Doctor says, I'm sorry, I'd love to give you one. The Food and Drug Administration has not okayed it yet. There was only a sample that I received as a doctor. Food and Drug Administration has not okayed it yet. It won't be on the market for 6 months. During those next 6 months, do you think your knee pain would be more or less?
More.
Why?
Because you know it could be better.
Because you know it could be better. Exactly correct. As long as it's chronic knee pain, alrighty, you learn to live with it. All of a sudden you find out, hey, there's relief available. There's relief available. So where is the relief? And it's some bureaucrat in the Food and Drug Administration is draying around, and that's why I got to suffer knee pain. The knee pain increases. Moshe Rabbeinu, first thing he has to break the Jews out of their complacency. Moshe arrives. Whoa, he's here! Now do you believe? Oh, do I believe? Where are you going? Moshe Rabbeinu disappears. What do you think? You wake up the next morning when you grab the Egyptian Gazette. What would you be looking for?
Is he back yet?
Is he back yet? Every day you'd be looking. Why? Because then you really believe. That's when you really believe. And because you really believe, that breaks you out of that complacency of just having a Jewish identity, and you start living as a real Jew. You know why we eat the karpas? Nothing on Pesach is by accident. The commentaries say the karpas symbolizes Moshe Rabbeinu arriving and then leaving. It's there to tease us. And eventually out comes the food, which is the deliverance. The karpas is there to be to simulate what the Jewish people went through in Egypt. Moshe Rabbeinu arrived. We eat to take a bite of karpas. Hey, where are you going with that karpas? They're pulling it away from me. Where's the food? 6 months later, hopefully where you are for the Seder shouldn't take 6 months, but sometimes it seems like it. 6 months later, they finally bring out the food. That's exactly what the redemption in Egypt was supposed to be like. And by the way, none of the customs, all these customs, they sound like none of them are haphazard or random. It's all a Seder. There's a reason, there's a method for all this madness that we go through the Pesach Seder. That's what the commentaries say. Okay. Next question is like this. First of all, we make an announcement at the beginning of the Seder. Kol dichvin, we say holach ma'anya. This is the poor man's bread that our fathers ate in Egypt. By the way, hand matzah in Israel. I remember one year I made a calculation. The hand matzah cost about 150 shekels a kilo, something like that. The big round hand matzah. So I made a calculation. It came out to 35 cents a bite, which is why it's called poor man's bread. Because once you finish paying for it, and I just remember, my kid with it. So it's one thing you pay for it. I don't mind paying for the mitzvah. It's one thing, but when my 4-year-old son is sitting at the table and he's crumbling up hand matzah, I'm like, hey kid, not that. Take mommy's jewelry. Don't crumble up those matzahs are good as gold over there. What are you doing, kid? So we say halach ma'aneh. This is the bread of affliction and the bread of poor man's bread. We make a whole declaration. And then we say something very peculiar. We say, Kol dichvin yesei v'yechol. Anybody who's hungry should join us.
Yeah.
Only one problem. What's the problem with that announcement, gentlemen?
Did you invite anyone?
What's that?
Did you invite anyone over?
Close.
What?
We're already eating. They're already.
And we say, Kol dichvin yesei v'yechol. You're very close. Again, what's your first name? Binyamin? David. Kol dichvin yesei v'yechol. Anybody who's hungry should join us. There's only one problem with that announcement.
We're all hungry still? Or what?
Anybody who's hungry, what?
We already started.
We already started. What else?
Oh, nobody can hear you.
Nobody can hear you. Huh, that's great. We're all sitting in the end. Okay, anybody's hungry, join us for pizza. Nobody's there. Say you're in the backyard at your barbecue, and you say, okay, whoever wants can chow down with us. Who are you talking to? Nobody can hear you.
Some people open the door, they look around.
People open the door later on by Eliyahu Novi.
Oh.
By Eliyahu Novi, people open the door. We actually happened to us one year. We opened up the door. Now, it wasn't right by Eliyahu Novi. I think it was even before that. Also, we get a knock at the door at our Seder. And there's this old, weird guy at the door. And my kids were freaking out, like in this Eliyahu Novi thing, I should have paid him to come and do it. So we're all like, the guy came in. It turned out he was just a confused old man who was staying by one of the neighbors. He was in an old age home, and he left the neighbor's house. He was wandering around. It was pretty neat at the Seder. Woo! There he is at the door. So we opened the door when we went by the coast shell Eliyahu. So we make an announcement. Anybody who's hungry, come and join us. The problem is nobody can hear you. Nobody can hear you. What's going on over here? So the answer is according to the commentaries, that this announcement is not really an invitation. The announcement is a historical report. In other words, the Jewish people left Egypt. And they all took supplies with them. But not everybody took as much as everybody else. So some of the people called out, Kol dichvin yesa, anybody who's hungry, join us. We've got food. Those are people who could hear you. What we're saying is a historical report of what happened when the Jewish people left Egypt. That's called dichvin yesa v'yechol. Now, the real question here is, by the way, lachma anya, poor man's bread, is the same numerical value as 210. Lachma anya is 210. What significance it is? That's the amount of time that the Jewish people were in Egypt. 210 years. Right? 210 years. Lachma anya is the numerical method, gematria.
Now, what does that actually mean? Poor man's bread. It
Poor man-
doesn't have the word matzah in it, and it doesn't have...
Lachma, bread, poor man's bread. Matzah is poor man's bread.
Lachma is like lechem.
Lechem. From the word lechem. The word lechem, by the way, comes from the word milchama, which is battle, because most of the time you fight. Wars are fought over bread, theoretically.
Yeah.
Wars are fought over bread. So, lachma anya, we say halachma anya. Now, the real question becomes like this. Why is it that at the Pesach Seder, we demonstrate aristocracy, you bring out your finest china. I still have not figured out how to lean and drink wine at the same time, because if you tilt the cup, it spills. If you put it at this angle like this, you got to kind of cock your head, it's kind of awkward. The old days, that's how they used to eat. They used to eat leaning on a what do you call, probably Persian tradition. They probably had some sort of couch that leans up, and it was easy. The Gemara discusses it about how they used to lie down. That's certainly the Gemara is written in Iraq. It's all the same neighborhood. So they had the same. They had all those traditions, but for in Western people to eat, to lean over, it's not that comfortable. We do it as a show of aristocracy. That being the case, if we're the whole theme of the evening is the theme of aristocracy. So then why do we eat poor man's bread? Why are we eating matzah? Why are we eating poor man's bread if the whole theme of the evening is aristocracy? What's the idea? So the commentaries say like this, very interesting. Imagine there was once a king. And the king is walking through the countryside. He's with his royal entourage. And the king hears a shepherd. The shepherd's playing a flute. For some reason, all these kings always meet shepherds and play flutes. The shepherd's playing a flute, and the king is very enchanted by the shepherd's music. The king is very enchanted, and he gets into a conversation with him. He sees he's a very, very clever lad, and he invites him to the palace to become the royal musician. He's a great flutist, and he invites him to the palace. Okay, shepherd comes up to the palace. And eventually the king is very impressed with him, and he promotes him to become a member of the inner cabinet. After a couple of years, he sees he's a clever lad. He makes him a member of the inner cabinet. After a couple of years of being a successful cabinet member, the king then promotes him to be in charge, to be the Secretary of Defense. I mean, he's really impressed with this kid. And a few years later, he appoints him to the highest position in the land outside of the king, which is to be the royal treasurer. So now the kid's sitting, he's become the treasurer. 10 years have passed, and within 10 years he's already the second highest position in the land. The other ministers were jealous. So they came to the king, and they said to the king, listen, he's certainly talented and he's certainly capable, but as the royal treasurer, he's probably been stealing money from the royal coffers. I mean, how could anybody overcome that temptation? So the king says, no, it can't be. They said, no, you better check him, because it's impossible that a guy in his position, because they can't stand the fact that he's been promoted above them. So the king says to them, look, we'll have to go and do a search of his house. So they drive down to where the shepherd now lives. He lives in a giant mansion, because after all the years he's been in the mansion. King knocks on the door. He says, listen, I trust you implicitly, but we have no choice but to search your mansion. And I would like to search, and I want you to prove your loyalty to me. I don't have any doubt, but I have to be certain. So they do a search. They go through the entire mansion, and they don't find anything. Eventually, there's one last door. The king says to the shepherd, "Do me a favor, open this door, and you will have shown me that you are loyal, and I can trust you, and then I'm going to execute all the people who accused you." He says, "Excellency, I would really rather not open that door." He says, "Well, you're going to have to." He said, "I'd really rather not." He said, "I understand you'd rather not," which creates which makes it more suspicion and more urgent that you do so. Please open that door right now. Sees he has no choice. He opens the door, he swings it open. There's a very small closet. And in this closet, the king sees that his old shepherd uniform, when he was a poor shepherd, is hanging there in the closet, and his old shepherd's staff. That's all that's hanging there in the closet. King says to him, "What's this?" He says, "Look, I rose rags to riches. It was a very quick ascension on the ladder of success. That's dangerous, because that could go to your head sometimes. So I have a ritual. Once a year, I come over to this closet, I open up this closet, and I stare into the closet at my old clothing to remind myself where I came from, so it shouldn't go to my head." The commentaries say, we've got all the trappings of the Pesach Seder here. We're sitting around, and we're eating good food, and we're leaning, and we are free men, and the whole theme of the evening is that we're free, and that we're... But there's one danger. Dangers that could go to our head. The Torah says, you know what? Eat some poor man's bread. You need a reminder of where you came from. You came from Egypt, you were helpless, you were slaves, you were being beaten, and therefore the matzah becomes the feature attraction of the Seder in order that the reminder should be with us constantly. That's where we came from. Ask you one last question, and we're going to stop. What is the idea? What is the idea of what does freedom mean? What does it mean to be free? We talk about we are free people. What does freedom really mean? What's the definition of freedom?
You want to go first? I would say you want to make, you're able to make choices for yourself.
You're close? You're close? What's the definition? You know what the definition of freedom is? Your time is your own. Any time that your time is not your own, you're not free. If you have a boss, if you have a wife, if you have anybody, I once asked the guy who got married, the guy at Orsabat got married, he was married about 3 months. So I said to him, what have you learned in your first 3 months of marriage? So he kind of had a dazed look on his face. He says to me, don't make any independent plans. Right? That's right, because you're not free anymore. Freedom means that your time is your own. So part of aristocracy is we're sitting there, we're not in any rush, you're taking your time, you got all the time in the world. That's freedom. That's what it means to be a free person. However, you'll notice one thing about Pesach. What do we start doing the second day of Pesach? Sfiras HaOmer. We start counting. What are we counting towards? Counting towards Shavuos. Counting towards Shavuos. Isn't that an interesting coincidence? Pesach and Rosh, there's obviously connection between Pesach and Shavuos if we're counting from one to the other. You know why we do that? Because we got free. But freedom without a purpose is useless. You may as well be a slave. We got free, but we're free with a target. What's the target? To receive the Torah. And all we've done is we've traded in one form of subjugation. We were subjugated by Paro. We trade in physical subjugation for spiritual subjugation. So yes, at one point we were subjects of Paro. We trade that in, and now we go on to Shavuos. And we're counting from Pesach to Shavuos. On the one hand, we're free, but we're only free to now make the choice. As David said, we are now free to make the choice to accept God as our sovereign as opposed to Paro. And therefore, the freedom is a freedom with a purpose. That's what we're doing. We're counting from Pesach to Shavuos. Okay, we'll continue tomorrow.
You get this emailed or anything? This recording?
I don't know anything about it.